I won a $50 million jackpot and shared this news with my husband. He demanded all the money to start a business, but I refused due to his bad habits and wasteful spending. In anger, he burned all my winnings, with his mother involved in the scheme. I laughed at both of them because, in reality, the money they burned was... My name is Lila Anderson, and I'm 33 years old. I live in Dallas, Texas, where I work as a teacher. It's not a glamorous job, but I've always loved it. Helping kids learn and grow brings me a kind of joy that money can't buy, or so I thought. When I met Mike in high school, I thought he was the love of my life. We were inseparable, laughing, dreaming, planning our future together. He was charming and ambitious, always talking about how he'd make something big out of his life. After graduation, he got a job at a private firm, and I started teaching. Everything seemed perfect. We got married when we were 28, ready to take on the world as a team. But as time went on, cracks began to show. Mike started hanging out with a different crowd, guys who partied hard and had little interest in real responsibilities. Soon, his habits changed. What started as the occasional drink after work became heavy drinking every night. The late-night outings turned into missed mornings at the office. Eventually, Mike quit his job altogether, saying he needed a break to figure things out. I tried to support him, hoping he'd bounce back, but the break turned into months, and then years. I became the sole breadwinner, working long hours to keep us afloat. We had bills to pay, groceries to buy, and dreams we had to put on hold. Even though I loved him, I couldn't ignore the fact that I was carrying the weight of our life alone. Still, I held on to hope. Maybe he just needed time to find his footing again. Then, one day, everything changed. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through the mail after a long day at work, when I saw it, a letter from the State Lottery Commission. My heart raced as I opened it, and there it was, proof that I had won the $50 million jackpot. I couldn't believe it. I checked the numbers over and over again to make sure it wasn't a mistake. It was real. I had actually won. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of hope and excitement. This money wasn't just a ticket out of financial stress. It was a chance to build the life Mike and I had always dreamed of. I imagined us buying a beautiful house, traveling the world, and maybe even starting a family. I thought this was the miracle we needed to turn things around. When I told Mike the news, his reaction wasn't what I expected. At first, he seemed thrilled, hugging me and talking about how lucky we were. But then his tone changed. Instead of celebrating with me, he started talking about plans for a business, his business. "Lila, this is it," he said. "This is my chance to do something big. With the money, I can finally start my own company." I hesitated. I knew Mike. His big plans rarely turned into anything productive. He had a history of starting things and abandoning them halfway. I wanted to believe in him, but the thought of handing over that kind of money made my stomach churn. "Mike," I said carefully, "I think we need to be smart about this. We should focus on building a solid foundation first, a home, some savings for the future. Then we can talk about other things." His face darkened. "You don't trust me," he said, his voice low. "You've never believed in me." "That's not true," I replied. "I've always supported you. But this is a lot of money, and we can't afford to make any rash decisions." He stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I sat there, stunned. I had expected some resistance, but not this. Over the next few days, Mike became distant. He barely spoke to me, and when he did, it was cold and sharp. To make matters worse, his mother, Evelyn, started calling me. Evelyn had never liked me. She thought I was too independent, too focused on my career. She always wanted Mike to be with someone who would take care of him, the way she thought a wife should. When she heard about the lottery, she was relentless. "Lila, you're being selfish," she said during one of her calls. "Mike is your husband. If he wants to start a business, you should support him. That's what marriage is about." I tried to explain my concerns, but she cut me off. "You don't understand what it's like to sacrifice for someone you love," she snapped. "If you did, you wouldn't think twice about helping him." Her words stung, but I held my ground. I wasn't about to hand over millions of dollars to a man who had already shown he couldn't handle responsibility, especially not with Evelyn egging him on. Things escalated quickly after that. Mike's anger grew, and Evelyn's meddling only made things worse. It felt like they were teaming up against me, trying to wear me down until I gave in. I was determined to hold my ground, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing, something I couldn't yet see. And then it happened, the night that would change everything. I wish I could say that things got better after that, but they didn't. In fact, they got worse, much worse. Mike's behavior became more erratic with each passing day. He stopped pretending to care about anything other than getting his hands on the lottery money. Every conversation we had turned into an argument about it. Evelyn, of course, was always in his corner, whispering poison into his ear and calling me names behind my back. It was like they had formed a team, and their sole mission was to break me down. One night, Mike came home reeking of alcohol, his eyes bloodshot and wild. I was in the kitchen, trying to focus on making dinner, when he slammed the door behind him so hard that the walls shook. "We need to talk," he said, his voice slurred but his tone angry. I set down the knife I was using and turned to face him. "What is it now, Mike?" I asked, my patience already worn thin. "You don't get it, do you?" He snapped. "This money could change everything for us. I could start my business and finally prove to everyone that I'm not a loser. But no, you want to keep it all for yourself." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Mike, I've told you before, it's not about keeping the money for myself. It's about using it wisely. You have to understand that." "No," he interrupted, slamming his fist on the table. "You're just selfish. You think you're better than me because you've been working and I haven't." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had spent years supporting him, carrying the weight of our life on my shoulders, and now he was calling me selfish? I couldn't hold back anymore. "You want to talk about selfish?" I shot back. "You've done nothing but drink and waste time for years while I've been the one keeping this family afloat. And now, when we finally have a chance to build a better future, all you care about is yourself." Mike didn't say anything. He just stood there, glaring at me, his fists clenched at his sides. After a long, tense silence, he turned and stormed out of the house. I thought he was going to the bar again, but I couldn't have been more wrong. The next day, I came home from work to find the house eerily quiet. Mike was sitting in the living room, staring at the coffee table with a strange look on his face. I noticed a faint smell of smoke in the air, but I didn't think much of it at first. "What's going on?" I asked cautiously. He didn't answer. He just smirked and leaned back at his chair. "You're going to thank me for this one day," he said cryptically. I frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" Then he stood up, walked over to the fireplace, and gestured toward it. That's when I saw it, a pile of ashes still smoldering in the grate. My heart sank as realization hit me like a freight train. "No," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Tell me you didn't." He laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "Oh, I did. That precious lottery ticket you care so much about? It's gone. Burned it myself." I couldn't breathe. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. "Why?" I managed to choke out. "Why would you do something so insane?" "Because you wouldn't listen," he shouted, his voice full of venom. "I tried to reason with you, but you just kept saying no. So now neither of us gets the money. Maybe next time, you'll learn to trust me." I stood there, frozen, as tears streamed down my face. How could he do this? How could the man I loved, the man I had built my life with, destroy everything we had for the sake of his own pride? As if that wasn't enough, Evelyn showed up later that evening. She waltzed into the house like she owned the place, a smug smile on her face. "You did the right thing, Mike," she said, completely ignoring me. "That money was going to ruin your marriage anyway. Better to get rid of it than let her control everything." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Evelyn had encouraged him to do this. She had been part of the plan all along. My shock quickly turned to anger. "Get out of my house," I said, my voice shaking with fury. Evelyn just scoffed. "Oh, please, Lila. Don't act like you're some kind of victim. You're the one who pushed him to this point. That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. Both of you need to leave, I said firmly. Right now. Mike tried to argue, but I cut him off. You burned the ticket, Mike. You destroyed everything. I don't even know who you are anymore. Eventually they left, but the damage was done. I spent the rest of the night sitting in the dark, replaying everything in my head. The betrayal was too much to process. I had loved Mike. I had believed in him. And this was how he repaid me. But as I sat there, something shifted inside me. The devastation began to give way to something else, determination. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Not Mike, and certainly not Evelyn. They thought they could ruin my life and walk away unscathed? They had no idea who they were dealing with. The betrayal was only the beginning. Now it was my turn to take control. Suspense builds as Lila sets her sights on justice, leaving readers eager to discover her next steps in Part 3. I spent that sleepless night thinking about everything, about Mike, Evelyn, and the sheer audacity of what they had done. I had worked so hard to keep our life together, to support him when he faltered, and this was how they repaid me. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the principle. They had crossed a line, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. The next morning, I called my best friend, Claire. Claire was more than just a friend. She was a lawyer, sharp as a tack and fiercely loyal. She listened patiently as I poured my heart out, telling her every detail about the ticket, Mike's outburst, and Evelyn's involvement. When I finished, she didn't hesitate. Lila, she said firmly, you have every right to be angry, but now it's time to act. We're going to hold them accountable for what they've done. Claire wasted no time. We filed for divorce that very day, and she began gathering evidence for a lawsuit. Mike had burned the ticket, but we had proof of the win. A copy of the ticket's numbers, the notification from the Lottery Commission, and even photos I had taken with the ticket when I first got it. Claire explained that destroying a lottery ticket was legally considered destruction of property, and since the ticket had significant monetary value, Mike could face serious consequences. He doesn't just owe you an apology, Claire said. He owes you the full value of that ticket. And Evelyn? If we can prove she encouraged him, she's in this just as deep as he is. Hearing her say those words gave me a sense of hope. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had a chance to take back control of my life. The days that followed were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and difficult conversations. I froze all of our joint accounts, ensuring that Mike couldn't access another penny of my hard-earned money. Claire also helped me draft an official separation agreement, outlining that Mike would be held responsible for any debts or damages caused during our marriage. When Mike found out about the accounts, he was furious. He showed up at the house unannounced one evening, pounding on the door. Lila, open up, he shouted. What the hell is this? You froze the accounts. I opened the door just enough to face him, but kept the chain lock on. Yes, I did, I said calmly. After what you did, I can't trust you with my money. He glared at me, his face red with anger. Your money? We're married, Lila. That makes it our money. Not anymore, I said firmly. I've filed for divorce, Mike. And trust me, you're going to have to answer for everything you've done. His expression shifted from anger to panic. You can't do this, he stammered. Evelyn said we were in this together. She said. Evelyn's wrong, I interrupted. She's been wrong about a lot of things. And now, both of you are going to face the consequences. The legal case was intense, but Claire was relentless. She subpoenaed Mike's financial records, proving that he had been spending money recklessly for years. She also uncovered text messages between Mike and Evelyn, where they had discussed burning the ticket as a way to teach me a lesson. Those messages were the final nail in their coffin. In court, I had to relive the pain of what they had done. Mike sat there, looking smug at first, but as the evidence piled up against him, his confidence began to crumble. Evelyn, who had always been so outspoken and domineering, looked pale and nervous as the texts were read aloud. Mrs. Anderson, the judge said, addressing Evelyn, did you or did you not encourage your son to destroy the lottery ticket? Evelyn fumbled for words. I didn't think it was that serious, she stammered. It was just a piece of paper. A piece of paper worth $50 million, the judge said sharply. Do you understand the gravity of what you've done? By the end of the trial, the verdict was clear. Mike was found guilty of destruction of property, and Evelyn was held accountable as an accomplice. The judge ordered Mike to pay restitution equal to the full value of the ticket, $50 million. Of course, Mike didn't have that kind of money, but the ruling ensured that any income or assets he earned in the future would be garnished to pay me back. Evelyn faced her own set of consequences. She was fined heavily and ostracized by her community. The proud, overbearing woman who had once looked down on me was now left to face the fallout of her actions. It wasn't just about the legal victory, it was about reclaiming my power. For years, I had sacrificed so much for Mike, believing that love meant enduring the hard times. But love isn't supposed to feel like a one-sided battle. It isn't supposed to drain you or make you feel small. As I walked out of the courtroom that day, I felt a sense of relief I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't just free from Mike and Evelyn, I was free to rebuild my life on my own terms. But I wasn't done yet. There was still more to come, and I knew exactly how to use this moment to inspire others. My story wasn't just about betrayal. It was about resilience. It was about finding the strength to stand up for yourself, even when it feels like the whole world is against you. And the best part? My story was far from over. When I walked out of that courtroom, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, wondering when the next blow would come. Mike and Evelyn had tried to destroy me, but instead, they had destroyed themselves. Now I was finally free to take control of my life. The legal victory wasn't just about the money, it was about reclaiming my dignity. Of course, I didn't get the $50 million back. Mike didn't have the resources to pay me, but the court's decision ensured that any income he earned in the future would go toward restitution. Evelyn's fines left her scrambling, and the humiliation they both faced was a consequence of their own making. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding. I sold the house Mike and I had shared, wanting nothing to do with the memories tied to it. The proceeds weren't much, but they were enough to help me start fresh. I moved into a small but cozy apartment in downtown Dallas, closer to work and far away from anything that reminded me of Mike and Evelyn. But I didn't stop there. I realized that my story could be more than just a painful chapter in my life. It could be a lesson for others. I started speaking at local community events, sharing my experience with women who were dealing with toxic relationships or struggling to find their voice. At first, it was just a way to vent, but soon, it became something bigger. People reached out to me, thanking me for inspiring them to take charge of their lives. One day, a reporter from a local news station heard about my story and asked if I'd be willing to do an interview. I hesitated at first. Putting my personal life on display wasn't easy, but then I thought about the women I could help. The interview aired a week later, and the response was overwhelming. My inbox was flooded with messages from people who had seen the segment, many of them thanking me for giving them hope. As for Mike and Evelyn, their downfall was swift and public. Mike struggled to find work after the trial. His reckless behavior and the court ruling made him a pariah in every job interview. Evelyn, once the proud matriarch of her family, was ostracized by her friends and neighbors. People whispered about her involvement in the scheme, and she became a cautionary tale in the community. A few months later, Mike tried to reach out to me. He left a voicemail saying he wanted to talk and apologize. I didn't return the call. What could he possibly say that would make up for what he had done? He had burned not just the ticket, but every bridge between us. Forgiveness was something I might find in my heart someday, but reconciliation? That was out of the question. Despite everything, life had a way of surprising me. During one of my community events, I met a man named David. He was a volunteer, helping organize a fundraiser for single mothers in need. We started talking, and I was struck by how kind and genuine he was. He listened to my story without judgment, offering words of encouragement that felt like a balm to my soul. Over time, our friendship grew into something more. David wasn't like Mike. He didn't see me as a means to an end or try to control me. Instead, He supported my dreams and reminded me that I was stronger than I gave myself credit for. For the first time in years, I felt what it was like to be in a partnership built on respect and trust. Now, as I stand here in front of my new home, a modest but beautiful house I purchased with my own hard work, I feel an overwhelming sense of pride. This house isn't just a structure. It's a symbol of everything I've overcome. It's a reminder that betrayal doesn't have to define you, and that even the deepest wounds can heal with time and resilience. I've learned so much from this journey. I've learned that love without respect is a cage, that forgiveness doesn't mean letting people back into your life, and that sometimes the only way to move forward is to let go of what's holding you back. Looking back, I'm grateful for the lessons, even if they came at a high price. Mike and Evelyn thought they could break me, but instead, they made me stronger. And now, as I look toward the future, I know that I'm ready for whatever comes next. This is my story. Not of betrayal, but of resilience. Not of loss, but of triumph. And if you're going through something similar, I want you to know this. You're stronger than you think, and it's never too late to take control of your life. Because in the end, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising above.